I am not one to usually complain or criticize UFC cards. After all, they're giving us consistent events almost every week, and if some of the Apex fight nights fall short, I simply skip them. However, UFC 289 has to be one of the historically worst cards that I've ever seen the UFC put on. On the main card, out of all of fighters, the only fighters that are ranked is Dan Ige at featherweight and the main and the co-main event. We don't even have any hot prospects other than Mike Malott, who has a 5-fight win streak stemming back from 2014. This is a historically bad fight card. Amanda Nunes is taking on the challenger Irene Aldana, is only on a 2-fight win streak after getting trounced 50-45 by Holly Holm in 2020. Only fighting in 2021 against a pregnant Yana Santos, and then liver kicking Macy Chiasson off of her back in 2022. And keep in mind, the only reason she's getting this title fight at all is because Juliana Pena, another abysmal prospect of Amanda Nunes defending her belt, had to pull out due to injury. Now, while Amanda Nunes is the woman's GOAT, after losing to Pena and having a poor showing in their rematch, she needs a worthy dance partner, and she can't simply carry this fight card alone. Let's take a look at the elephant in the room, which is Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. By far the best fight on this card. Charles Oliveira coming off of a loss and Beneil Dariush coming off of an insane win streak. Cannot save this card. You can't put a single ranked lightweight fight on a card and expect it to all be saved. Let's examine critically everyone else's records. Marc-Andre Barrial, since 2021, has gone 3-2 in his last 5 fights. 2-2 in his last 4. 5-4 in the UFC. Is a less than 500 fighter. He's fighting Eric Anders, who is a former NFL player, and he has gone 2-1 in his last 3 fights. In his last 4, also 2-2. So we have 2 unranked fighters in the UFC that are 50-50 fighters coming into this fight. That's opening up the main card. We have Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr. Dan Ige has been catching L's at the top of the division. He is a fighter that I really respect, so you won't hear me giving him any shit for that, but he is by no means a top prospect anymore, and I would say is a gatekeeper to the top 10, top 5, and he's fighting Nate Landwehr, who after miraculously surviving an onslaught from David Onama in round 1, pretty easily choked out Austin Lingo, who is not a hot fighter himself. Nate Landwehr is a guy who lost Julian Erosa. I don't have good expectations for him. I expect Dan Ige to clean him up, polish him off, and to make this fight look fairly uncompetitive. Mike Malott versus Adam Fugit. Mike Malott on a good win streak, one of the more entertaining fighters in this card. It's stunning to me that Mike Malott, other than Dariush, is on the biggest win streak on this UFC card. Notably arm triangling Johan Lanise and knocking out Mickey Gall in his last 2 fights in the UFC. He's actually looked good. We compare him to Adam Fugit, comes into the UFC on a 4-fight win streak and goes 1-1 in the UFC. I expect him to lose this fight, and hopefully Mike Malott will at least be ranked after this. Not only is this fight a lower level fight with neither fighter being ranked, but I also expect it to be mismatch with Mike Malott cleaning up Adam Fugit. Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. This is a top tier fight. I cannot complain about this fight at all, but this fight alone cannot save this card. Amanda Nunes versus Irene Aldana. Both 35 years old. Amanda Nunes went on one of the most legendary win streaks of any female fighter, of any fighter for that matter, until losing to Juliana Pena in an honestly embarrassing performance, getting rear naked choked in round 2 of their fight in 2021. Comes back, defeats Juliana Pena, gets her revenge on her, but looking older in the process. I think an Amanda Nunes from even just 3 years ago would have finished Juliana Pena in that rematch. She's taking on Irene Aldana. From 2019, loses to Raquel Pennington, goes on a 2-fight win streak, with her best win being a left hook over Ketlin Vieira in 2019. Then loses to Holly Holm in one of the most embarrassing decision losses I've ever seen, following her around for 25 minutes, getting 50-45, losing every second of it. then beats a pregnant Yana Santos in round 1 of their fight, and up kick to the liver on Macy Chiasson in 2022, a year later. This is not the win streak that you'd want to see from a title contender. But with the bantamweight division being thin and Amanda Nunes's trilogy fight with Juliana Pena falling through, I'm not blaming the UFC for putting on this main event, but with only the co-main event supporting it, this is still an abysmally bad card, and it doesn't get any better when you're looking through the prelims. The best fight, Nasruddin Imavov versus Chris Curtis, should be on the main card. They do not need it to headline the preliminaries. Aman Zahabi's been looking good lately. Miranda Maverick could put something together and make it at the top of women's flyweight, but then there is really just nothing else on here at all. I don't complain when we get UFC Apex fight nights where 90% of the card is unranked fighters that are going to be cut from the UFC in a year's time. But when that kind of matchmaking starts bleeding its way onto UFC pay-per-views, I am going to complain about it.